You're with the Retro Hour podcast, and it is time to welcome on this week's very special guest. Now, anyone that's attended retro shows in the UK over the last few years, and maybe a bit wider afield as well, I'm sure will be familiar with our guest this week and some of his crazy inventions that we'll get onto in just a moment as well. Maybe you've used his incredible website, Retro.Directory, that tells you about some incredible retro events and lots more that are happening near you. Maybe you watch his YouTube channel as well. This is Rob Smith, who is a developer and a wacky inventor. We'll have to get more into that in just a bit, Rob, but welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Hello, that's quite an introduction.
Yeah, appreciate it, yeah. Well, whenever we see you at events, you've always got, something that you're like, Dan, you've got to come and have a look at this, and there's always a big crowd around it. And stuff like your disc cleaner workstation, that plays Rolls Royce car wash while it's washing
pumping
discs,
out beats as it goes.
Yeah. Levitating Boing Balls, a new game that you've got, floppy disk whack-a-mole. We'll get into all that as well. I mean, one thing we like to do with our guests there, Rob, is kind of find out a bit about kind of your geek credentials, kind of where it all began for you. So what was your earliest computer memory then? Where did your journey and your interest start?
Well, it started off with my dad used to use Commodore VIC-20s for work, and he brought one home, and I would just tinker with it a little bit. And the thing where you type in some of the programs out of the books that come with it, and none of them ever work, although one of them did just once, and it was really cool. It was a bit like Etch-a-Sketch. And I didn't really understand what any of that was, but I played with that for quite a while until it stopped working altogether. And I think I remember, because obviously the electronics interest, I pulled it apart and I'd look inside, switched it back on again, and a transistor exploded and nearly hit me in the face. So that was fun. But then I didn't really play with any computers for quite a while, apart from what was at school, which was BBC Micros. So didn't really get to play with them for quite a while. I was lucky enough to play with a little bit of early Technic Lego on the BBC Micro at school. That was a primary school. And then around the age of 11, I got the Amiga, and that's really where it all started.
Were you one of those kids that took the video recorder apart to see how it worked? And
I would have been in trouble with the video recorder, but it certainly did take things apart, And I was always making things.
I could never put them back together, though. That was my problem.
You have to have screws left over. That's the important bit. If you haven't, then you've put it together wrong. That's the rules.
I think that's pretty cool that you were doing Lego Technic as well. I totally forgot about that. And there was quite a lot of BBC-controlled computer devices, robot arms, I remember at one point. There was all different things. Did you do much with the BBCs then? Was it just a school literacy program stuff?
I think I just got left playing with it one lunchtime. And I think I got as far as making a sort of traffic light sequence happen. And then I didn't see the kit again after that. So I don't really know what happened to it. But just as I was moving out of primary school, just started to see the RM Nimbuses appear. So it gives you an idea of the sort of time.
Yeah. Similar time. Did you have the Archimedes as well then for a while?
They were there as well, although I didn't really get to play with them much. But
And then the Amiga landed. So what kind of stuff did you start to do on the Amiga? I was wondering, you've done a few videos with AMOS, if you had a background in using some of those languages.
Yeah, so when I got the Amiga, obviously like everybody else, I played all the games on it. Obviously, there was the Cartoons Classics pack, so I know Dan's favourite game is in there, Captain Planet.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep. So played those for quite a while, and then I would explore around with Workbench and and Deluxe Paint and things like that. And then I think it was Amos BASIC came on an Amiga format cover disc, and I just started tinkering with it and playing with it, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but you sort of meddle with it. I sent off for the manual, probably read that cover to cover. I don't know how many times, and then slowly things started to make sense, and I did start to actually create things in it. Nothing that I would ever really want to share with anyone, but but the sort of dreadful things that people did make in Amos back in the day. And then Amos Professional was on another cover disc, and I had a copy of that. And then I got the Amos compiler. I learnt so much about how programming worked. It was a really good foundation for how it all started.
It's interesting because we had Retro.Bytes, who's a great YouTuber, on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and your story kind of mirrors him in many ways. He got the Cartoon Classics pack. He mentioned getting Amos on the cover disc. I've got that really strong memory of that as well. And I was reading the latest issue of Amiga Addict magazine, where they interview a few of the guys that worked on Amiga Format and Amiga Shopper, and they mentioned in there that at the time they didn't realise it, but really these magazines and that the tutorials they were doing and the cover discs they were giving away probably gave birth to an entire industry, and so many people had that shared memory of it.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I did other things as well, like whilst I was messing with AMOS, I saw some of the extra commands, and the next thing you know, I was wiring things up to the parallel port and seeing if I could mess with stuff in the real world.
Yeah.
Usually just a few LEDs flashing, but it was still fun and a little bit of overlap between the sorts of things that I was interested in.
Because you had an interest in hardware. How did you get that? Like, were you playing with electronics kits or anything as a kid?
Yes, my parents would buy me electronics kits. Pretty much every Christmas I'd get one with, like the 200-in-1 or those sorts of things. And I'd just mess with them and play with them and eventually break some of them. I'd cut some of the pieces out and then make my own things out of them and destroy them, basically. But learned so much from them, and it was just fun to play with them.
So you got like an understanding of resistors and like capacitors and little diodes and stuff like that.
That's right, yeah. And obviously how the magic smoke gets released, which is always fun.
Keep that inside.
Yep.
Talk through your Amiga setup that you had back then. What did you have?
So it was standard Amiga 500 Plus with the 1 meg extra chip RAM and a second floppy disk drive. The only difference was I had it connected to a hi-fi, so I got stereo output, but it was connected to a really old TV that was a bit blurry through the TV modulator. So it was challenging to work with, but you work with what you know at the time.
Yeah, so. TV modular. I'm sure that's the only reason that I'm literally the only person in my family that ever needed glasses. I'm sure that is why, from using crap TVs and modulators back in the day.
Well, you say that, but I don't need glasses at the minute.
Right.
So who knows?
Might have had a nicer TV than me in your bedroom, Rob.
No, the thing is, it was a larger TV, so it was further away from it. So maybe that's what it was.
Well, I mean, at this stage, you talked about, you're initially into playing games. So this more creative aspect of using computing then, did that kind of become more prevalent over time? And what else were you doing apart from programming?
It was just mainly programming. Obviously, playing some of the games. My brothers also were using the Amiga too, and we'd sit together and play things like Dungeon Master and things like that together. Nice collaborative and shouting at each other, but they'd also get annoyed because I wouldn't get off the computer because I wanted to use the AMOS all the time and play with that. So it was a bit of a fight for the access to the machine.
Did you ever release anything like in public domain or anything, or something magazine?
So there was two things that happened. One was when AMOS Professional came out on the cover disc, Amiga Format did a Write a Game in AMOS competition, and I'd created a game that I sent to them called In the Pipeline. Now, I didn't know at the time, I'd never seen Pipe Mania, and apparently it was quite a good clone of it. It was one of the winners, which was quite cool. Took about 12 months to get any kind of prize out of them, but...
What did you get?
It was about 50 quid or something like that,
right.
Which was, when you're a teenager, that's quite nice. And then there was another game which I made, which was a 3D Pac-Man game, which I didn't know had gone into a magazine until I saw it on another YouTube video quite recently, and they were going through a magazine. I was like, whoa, that's my game.
No way.
So, yeah, crazy.
So I guess they didn't send you any money for that one?
No, not at all. That was PD, so that's fine.
So, with the Amiga, floppy disk was the kind of main format at the time. And CD-ROM obviously came later. I remember people hacking their Amigas together and, having maybe a SCSI device or something like that with the CD-ROM. But floppy disks were kind of a way of survival. And I find it really interesting that later on, a lot of your work involves floppy disks, and you seem to have a bit of a fascination with them and how they work. Were you kind of packing stuff together, trying to compress stuff into floppy disks and playing about with them?
No, it was actually grown out of a need because my 500 Plus had died, and I'd found a box of discs in the attic, and I just was curious what was on them because I hadn't seen them and touched them in 10 years, something like that. Obviously, the Varta issue happened on the 500 Plus, so it didn't work. It does now, which is good, but it didn't. So I thought, I wonder if I can try and make something to read these. And whilst I was at university, I'd come across a side of electronics I didn't even know about, which was embedded electronics. And that was all about programming chips that could run code, but they could talk to the outside world. Now, obviously, you've got Arduino and things these days, and it's very common. But back then, I'd never even seen this before, and it was just amazing. And I thought, I wonder if I can use that to try and read a disk. And I hadn't got a clue how it was stored, so it was quite a long time before I actually managed to recover anything off those disks. But it was quite a rewarding process, and I spent a long time documenting that one on my site.
So was that your DrawBridge?
That was the
project
DrawBridge,
then?
yeah.
Tell us about that then, for people that aren't familiar with it. Give us a background on what it is.
So it is DrawBridge stands for Disk Reader and Writer. It's a strange acronym, but it works. And it literally allows you to read an Amiga disk into an ADF file or write one back again. The clever thing about it is it ran off just a standard Arduino. Now, when I created this, things like Grease Weasel and things didn't exist. So the only other options you had was to use a real Amiga or something a bit more expensive, like the CryoFlux or something like that. And I didn't really want to pay that amount of money. I just wanted to experiment this myself. So that's kind of how it all started. And obviously, it's updated since then, and now it supports things like the Atari ST discs. We'll read PC discs as well. But I've not bothered going any further than that because it's way beyond the scope of what I originally wanted it to do.
There was a lot of different kind of ways that an Amiga disk would work as well. I remember putting it into my Amiga, just being able to read it straight away on Workbench, but then you'd have the NDOS ones as well. And there were also a few interesting disks that were Amiga and Atari. So how did you kind of get around those? And also, a bit of copy protection that might have been on some of the disks.
So the dual format discs just have a clever encoding where the sectors of the data kind of overlaps and it's encoded in a special way. And they rely on the fact that the early Atari STs only had single-sided drives, so they store most of the information on one side and allow the Amiga to use the other side. There's a lot more to it than that, but I think that's probably explaining that enough. And regarding copy protection, that was really interesting. When I started to read discs in, I was noticing that if I tried to read something a little bit clever and write it back, it didn't work anymore. So I started having a look at the sort of more low level, what was going on the disc. And there's a whole fascination of crazy different schemes that were used that go outside of the specification of how data is supposed to be written to a disc. And they abuse that in such a way that you can read it back, but you can't write it back to disk again. Because if you do, you basically conform to that specification that they broke originally. And you can detect that in games. And once I'd understood that, I could then successfully read that information too.
I saw a fascinating presentation you did about disk protection and the different types. And it's interesting because it was an arms race, the companies versus the kind of crackers.
Yeah.
Amazing how some of them work and the data gets spread and then brought back together. Were you kind of fascinated just exploring that world? And are there certain people out there that are huge kind of copy protection people that you could talk to?
That was just completely self-explanatory, self-exploring. I looked around and obviously now I've been in touch with people who've worked on those sorts of things and understand them a bit better than I did. But it was just purely looking at what it's doing and understanding why it works and what it's doing to detect that. At one point, I was even trying to understand it. I actually looked at the WinUAE source code and looked at the data and seeing how it was being interpreted and things like that. So it was a proper deep dive into why things work the way they do and how it works.
Would you ever do that with CD-ROM?
No.
That's another world. Yeah.
Well, DrawBridge has played an important role in preserving history as well. I know your DrawBridge devices used to recover the original Lemmings level editor from old floppies. What's kind of the story there, and how did that feel to be, preserving such an iconic piece of gaming history with your device?
When I was working on DrawBridge and I decided to do some updates so that I could try and get it to actually work in WinUAE emulator in real time, I got to a stage where it was really working and I sent it off to Neil, RMC, or Retro Collective as they now are, and he did this fantastic video about it all and showed that it worked. And then it caught the eye of Mike Daly, who noticed he'd got a load of discs that were all encoded in some rather unusual format and hadn't been able to read them. And I didn't know this was going on at the time, but Neil sent the drive that I'd sent to him to Mike, and Mike recovered the files and sent them back to Neil. And then I was just absolutely amazed when I saw what had happened, and that was an amazing experience and feeling, knowing that had happened and that information had been recovered. But it's not the first time I'd had that. I'd had lots of people email me saying, I'm just so grateful because I've managed to retrieve files that I thought I'd lost or would never be able to access again. And it's been quite rewarding just hearing people's stories.
Yeah, if you told you as a kid that you're responsible for preserving a part of Lemmings history like 30 years ago, it'd have blown your mind back then a bit.
It would, but it has always been one of my favourite games, so that's fair enough.
I find it really interesting as well that, DrawBridge was out there and there were other products. Was there anything that defined it and made it different other than it kind of being a really cheaper way to do it?
Because I'd put all the plans on my website showing you how to do it, and I wasn't charging for any of that. And it was literally just bits you could buy from eBay or wherever. It didn't cost anything, and it literally just a couple of components and a few wires, and you could build your own interface. So easy, and it just worked. Very, very, very straightforward.
Did that help you when you were getting the floppy drive to work on the Mister as well? Which I was amazed that the floppy drive didn't work on the Mister from the start, because loads of people were kind of running old systems on there, old cores, and it's just a perfect thing to have running on there. The
knowledge I learned from it was really, really useful, but the hardware that I've built for the Mister is completely different. It's a lot simpler, but it's completely different. And I've just started working back on the last bit of that I wanted to do. So the Mister Minimig core, for example, doesn't support any copy protected images, so you can't put SCP or IPF files on there. So the minute I'm working on trying to make the core read those as well, which would be really nice, so you don't have to play pirated, cracked games on there. I think that'd be quite nice to see.
I mean, whenever I see you at shows and events, I did mention at the start there, you've always got some incredible new invention, and generally, people are around you with the jaws dropped. I think it was at Ravi's Robin Hood show when you first showed me this device that you've got, what basically allows Windows to natively read and write Amiga disks, which was always something that I heard was impossible before. So give us kind of the background on this project then, and how you managed it.
So this continued the work from DrawBridge and the stuff I'd done to allow floppy disks to work within WinUAE, which I'd also added support for Greaseweasel and Supercard Pro boards as well. And I thought to myself, I always wanted to be able to do it myself, and it'd just been sitting there on the backlog for a long, long time. And then I thought, no, I'm going to have a go at this. And I sat there tinkering and working my way through it, and it actually wasn't as hard a task as I thought it would be, because there's plenty of libraries out there, for example, that will understand say an ADF file, a disk image file, and allow you to see the files on it. So merging that with what I'd already written for DrawBridge to read the data off the disk, which essentially does create an ADF file, it's all just fitted together. So that was quite nice.
Does it image the disk then? Is that how it works?
No, it's actually reading it in real time, but it's obviously it remembers the tracks as it read them in, so it doesn't have to keep reading them. So it does kind of decode them into a suitable buffer, but it's not imaging the disk. You don't have to wait for it. It's kind of real time.
Yeah, it blew my mind when I saw that. Back in the day, it was always you needed hardware to do it. It was always, that the PC controller, it's impossible to read and write Amiga disks on it. So, yeah, that was incredible when you did that. But I mean, it's also been extended to other platforms as well. I mean, obviously, you're very well known for your Amiga work, but I mean, DrawBridge has got, support for Atari ST and PC disks now as well. I mean, are there any other retro platforms that you're passionate about apart from the Amiga, or maybe any that you're kind of curious to tinker with and do a bit of work on?
I've never really been involved with any of the other systems. So I don't really know much about them. I was tempted when I released my Christmas game last year, because I was kind of dared to maybe having a look at the Spectrum, but don't really know anything about it at this stage. So, yeah, it's kind of out of my area of expertise at all.
Well, you mentioned about the Christmas game there as well. I mean, you definitely want to hear more about that in just a moment, but also kind of hardware versus software then. I mean, do you have like a preference? Obviously, you work on both, with your building devices and then your AMOS coding as well. I mean, do you prefer kind of one process to the other, or anything you find more challenging?
I generally find the software side goes smoother. The hardware side usually takes 5 times longer than I expect it to. Because something won't work, or a wire will fall off and I hadn't noticed, or something will go wrong, or I'll blow something up, or I can't remember what I was doing recently. I was messing with pipe ecos, and I managed to go through 2 of them in the process. So.
Oh, wow. Well, tell us about some of the games that you've worked on as well, because if people go to your website, you've actually got an itch page with a bunch of titles on there as well. Tell us
yes.
About some of these. Like Trick or Treat looks incredible. Halloween themed game. You've got Santa's Present Drop.
Yeah, so a whole series of those ones. That one started off years ago as an iPhone game, because I just wanted to learn how to program on the iPhone, and it stayed on the App Store for a while, and then I took it off. Then I converted it to an HTML game. And then I thought, I wonder if I can write this in AMOS. So that became the first theme. And then I kind of carried on the Santa's Present Drop, building on the previous game as and continuing the storyline right up to the last one we had, which was Santa's Present Drop, the Grunch's Revenge, which completely different type of game, sort of a cross between sort of Lemmings and some sort of puzzle game. I think it was possibly a little bit too difficult for some people because they struggled with it. That was a huge, major undertaking, that one. Massive game, and that took me about 6 months to sort of make in the background.
How did you make it then? What was kind of the process there?
So that one was all AMOS again. That one started off with me building a level designer for what I wanted it to do. And then there's quite a lot of logic in there. So, for example, like one of the characters could walk over a button and it can trigger something to happen. So I started to build all this logic in where something can trigger something else to happen. And then once I'd got that working, it was slowly just building all the framework around all the things that I wanted to happen over time. And then literally you do all the fun bits at the end, which is all the sound effects and all the music and all that sort of stuff. So that's always the polish at the end.
What's your process of doing that, like sound effects?
Just randomly grab things that I think fit, pretty much. But I've been lucky always with all the games I've done. Someone's always done the music for me because that is something I cannot do. So that's always been really helpful. But one of the things I've done is, because I like to help other people learn, is every single one of those games pretty much has got the source code included with it as well. And most of them have got a video that explains how it works as well. So there's kind of a full circle between, if you just want to play the game, that's fine. But if you want to learn a little bit as well, there's that side to it as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important that you've got like that educational aspect and you're putting all of this out on YouTube. Like quite a lot of it's over my head, but I enjoy your videos and I love the way you kind of present it as well. Have you got some good feedback from people about them?
Yeah, I do. I get some very nice feedback. Mostly positive, which is nice. Hardly anything negative. So that's
on YouTube. That's rare.
I know.
So tell us about your channel and for people that haven't watched it, what can they expect from it and kind of what inspired you to start documenting your work on YouTube?
Well, that all literally started again when I started the stuff with WinUAE. I made a video just showing how to install my little DrawBridge board into a floppy drive, and I noticed it was doing quite well. So I thought, okay, I'll make a video and see how it goes. And I did one of the ones which was the Santa's Present Drop. And obviously they don't do a lot to start with when you're first starting a channel, but I enjoyed making it. And I thought it's good because I'd always wanted to have a go at video editing. So for me, it was a nice learning curve about something I was really interested in. So yeah, that was good. And obviously it's grown over time and it kind of goes all over the place. Sometimes it's software, sometimes it's hardware, sometimes it's repair, sometimes it's just me having fun. But it generally is, if I find it fun, I'm hoping everybody else will. And I don't really have a specific theme I stick to, although most of it's sort of around the retro topic.
One video that I loved recently, you did like kind of a retrospective of Xcopy on the Amiga, which for anyone that used an Amiga back then, obviously I think everyone had a copy of that in their disc box. I was actually quite amazed when watching your video to see that it actually did come as an official boxed product. Yes. I was wondering who the heck bought Xcopy back in the day. So tell us why that meant so much to you then, and tell us a bit about the kind of what you learned from covering Xcopy in that video.
Well, first of all, I didn't realise that there were that many different versions of it. I think I saw a box copy on eBay a while back, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. There's a story here. The interview that I did, which was really, really nice, actually came out as a result of the first Kickstart event, Ravi's first Kickstart event, when I had my copy disc station, and I got contacted querying about the design because the design was sort of very Xcopy-like. And I think there was some concern that I might be trying to sell this product, and a bit of concern about sort of, copyright and that sort of thing. Obviously, that wasn't the case, and it got spun around that, would you like to come and talk about this? Because obviously you've got some history there, and I learned loads and loads and loads about that too. But it was a video that took a long time to make. That interview was, before I edited it, was about an hour and a half long. Really, really interesting, and it's a shame I had to cut it down so much. But the rest of the story as well, all the different versions of Xcopy and all the features that came with it, and then the Cyclone dongle as well, which was something I'd never had before, and it was interesting seeing how that worked and exploring that software too, and all the other little programs as well that most people would never have even realised came with Xcopy, which I thought was just really interesting.
Yeah, it's great because now you're getting into that area where you're doing it's pretty much documentary, isn't it? Really. So there must have been quite a lot of work went into that video. How did you go about researching it?
Lots and lots and lots and lots of time on the internet and asking lots of information from Christian, who was the guy who did the interview.
Yeah.
Obviously, he had a lot of inside knowledge. So
it's an incredible watch. Now, looking at your website as well, there's some more interesting things on there that instantly stand out to me. Tell us a bit about your karaoke software then. Did you get a love for karaoke?
No, it was a bit of fun while I was, believe it or not, I started that while I was at college doing my GCSEs. And I was around a friend's house who also had an Amiga. And I was laughing because his brother was singing along to something, and I thought, if I could make some software that did this, and I just made it for a bit of fun. I wrote it for Windows, and it was one of the early things I wrote, written in Delphi. And it didn't do anything for quite some time, but I enjoyed making it, and I learned lots from it. And all it did was allow you to synchronize the words to some music. So very, very simple. And then whilst I was at university, I made it a shareware product, and I was so excited the first time it sold a copy. And it didn't sell another one for like 6 months after that, but it sold a copy. And it was amazing. But the most exciting thing for me was when I got a random email one day from a company called Televirtual, who you may or may not know who that is. They're the people who did the Knightmare TV series.
Yes.
And it was directly from Tim Child, querying me about could they use this software for some TV program they were working on. And I thought it was spam to start with, so I ignored it. And then it came again a week later. And then I went up to Norwich and spent a week in Norwich working with them and helping put this TV series together. And I spent the whole summer holidays basically synchronizing up music to to the lyrics and getting paid for it as well. So that was awesome.
That's incredible. Must have been like, I don't know if you're the same as me, like Nightmare was religious viewing when I was a kid. It must have been a bit of a I'm not worthy moment to get to work. Yeah,
it was brilliant. And they're because obviously the early Nightmares, it was all hand-drawn cell paintings. They got them all in frames all over the wall in the office. So it was like, it was just like, wow, when you walked in. And incredible.
Have you got a song that you always do on karaoke then after that?
Nope. But you
We're
know
not
what?
going to ask you to do it.
The scary thing is, after synchronizing so many of those, some of the really fast songs where you no chance of keeping up, you actually end up memorizing them, and it's quite scary.
Yeah, just singing them in the kitchen. Yeah. Let's talk a bit more about some of your wacky inventions, which I always love seeing. Tell us about you mentioned it at the start, the Amiga Boing Ball levitating project. Then how does this work, and or is that like a magician's secret?
In the background, you can probably see it if you're watching the video version.
It's in the background. It's not particularly a magician's secret. It's basically a kit that you can buy. There's a levitator and a magnet. But the art was in building a suitable base that disguised the levitating thing, and the nice globe that obviously is the Boing Ball. And that took quite a while to design and 3D print and work out so it all fits together, and lots of prototypes. And it's quite a simple thing to make, but the kit's quite expensive, so that's why I've never decided to sell them.
I thought it was quite interesting that you chose kind of like a sidecar on the Amiga to levitate the Boing Ball on, because later on you did the A590 project, which for our listeners that probably don't know about Amiga, A590, they won't know what that is at all. But it's a sidecar that you kind of stick on the side of your Amiga. It expands it. It does lots of different options like SCSI. I think it's quite old school as well. So you modernized it a bit. How did you approach that project? Because I know it was a massive undertaking.
That one was, I just seen a broken one on eBay, and I thought, well, I'll have a look. I've always wanted a hard disk for an Amiga, so I ordered it. And I think it sat in the corner of the room for like 6 months before I did anything with it. Half the bits were missing from it, and the owner didn't even know if it worked or not. And I plugged it in, and it didn't work, obviously. So that was the first step in to try and troubleshoot it. And I discovered online that I could get all of the schematics for it. And obviously, having the background in electronics, I could start poking around and seeing what was going on. And that was a lot of steps to actually get that one up and running. And once it was working, and because it can have RAM on it, and I'd replaced all the RAM and got that working, the next thing was to sort out the hard disk solution. And I think at the time, the Blue SCSI 2 had just come out.
Yeah.
So I installed one of those and it just worked. It was brilliant once I'd actually fixed all the problems with it. And there were that many chips that are broken in it that needed replacing. But that's what happens with the old kit, though.
I kind of like the case that you did with it as well.
Well, you see, there's been quite a few of these A590s over the time.
Yeah, so I'm not referring to the transparent one.
Yes,
which,
that was the last one
beautiful.
I've done. Yes, I really wanted to just show the insides of one because they're pretty boring grey boxes, and I thought, well, it'd be nice to be able to see inside. And I thought it needed a case anyway because when I'd got that one, it was just a motherboard. I hadn't got the case for it at all, so it needed one. I thought, well, print one, but let's get one made transparent. And it just really finished it off. And obviously that I had to light it up inside as well. So, but I designed the case to actually incorporate the blue SCSI so that the cards stack out the front, so you could easily swap out the hard disk if you needed to, or put it into a machine and copy stuff onto it.
I always think it's cool when you get solutions like that can modernize to a point a retro system, because it is a fine line, isn't it? I mean, sometimes, where do you kind of stand on this? I mean, obviously we like having mod cons. No one wants to use an Amiga 500 with a single floppy drive anymore. But is there a point when it goes too far for you and it's kind of a middle ground? How does that kind of go?
I don't really mind. I've got a 1200 with a Pi Storm in it, although I don't really use it particularly much. And that was just more because it's interesting to see. I'd like to try and keep it as original as possible, but so for example, I will install the Go drive in all my machines, which allows me to keep the original floppy drive intact. Because I like to keep that in there because, well, floppy drives, and I don't know, something about nostalgia about it, sitting there hearing it tick quietly. So kind of keeping a balance, I think.
It's weird you mentioned because for people that haven't used an Amiga, the internal floppy, well, and all the floppy drives on it as well, if you've got extra ones added to it, they make a little tick sound like every 3 to 4 seconds, don't they? When it's basically the heads of the drive seeking slightly to see if the floppy disk's been inserted.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I hated that noise. I used to run like an anti-click program to turn it off. Now leave it on all my systems. It's a bit like the heartbeat of the machine. So it's funny kind of what feels nostalgic and grows on you after time.
The anti-click's quite clever how that works, because it pulls the head right back to track 0 and then tries to step it back one track further, but it can't.
Yeah.
And you can't hear it. And they couldn't do that originally because some of the drives would let you do that and it damaged the mechanism. So.
Right. I always wondered why, if you could do that, they didn't at the factory.
I always loved how you put a floppy disk in the Amiga and it's a very dirty pirated disk, and the Amiga would vibrate as it's loading certain ones on the table. Yeah, that's what I miss. That kind of noise.
Yeah.
It was the old track loaders, wasn't it? I remember, I think it was Lotus 2. Mm-hmm. Yeah, literally, like my table would vibrate when that loaded.
Yeah.
The noisier the floppy drive, the better back in the day.
Absolutely. And that was one thing that was quite nice with me doing the thing for the Mister now, is the drive sounds exactly the same, which is just what you want it to do. The sort of work that I've done with WinUAE, it doesn't sound the same. It can't because of the way it works, but with something like the Mister, it can, and it just brings that feeling back again of how you remember it. I mean, I think because the number of times I've probably played Lemmings over the years, I know exactly the sounds that it makes as it loads the disc, and it was just nice to hear them again.
Yeah, you'd kind of you'd have those loading sounds just as you would with the Spectrum or something earlier. But talking of discs like vibrating tables and stuff, would your disc cleaning station help and cause less issues?
And tell us what it is as well for people that haven't seen it.
So, it started off as a bit of a joke, and it probably still is a bit of a joke. It's a ridiculously over-the-top way of cleaning a floppy disk that may have been stored badly and sort of maybe collected a bit of mold or something like that. And you put a disk into it, and it works away into a station where these foam pads come down and sort of clean the surface of the disk whilst it's playing some music in a rather ridiculous style, and it's like pouring isopropanol on things all over it. And then once it's done that for a while, it then moves the disk into another area where it blows hot air at the disk, just like a car wash would do. Now, I did actually do a head-to-head test with that compared to cleaning it manually, and surprisingly enough, it actually was really effective. So,
it's not just a gimmick; it actually works.
No, it actually does work. But the sound side is obviously when you're doing this, is the internal fabric on the disc gets wet, so it takes a long time to dry. And when I discovered that washing up liquid actually worked better than isopropanol, it took 45 minutes to dry a disc. So.
Wow.
I love how over-engineered it is. It's deliberately done so you can watch the action.
Absolutely.
When I was a young boy, I went to the Tate Gallery and they had a huge machine, over-engineered, designed to fold a paper aeroplane and fire it out, and it never worked. That was the whole art piece. And, I would consider the disc cleaning station as a kind of piece of Amiga modern art. I think it's really amazing, and you always spot it at a show as well, wherever you go.
You hear it.
Yeah, I was going to say you hear it, and there are those that complain about the fact that the songs get stuck in their head by the end of the day.
You must have heard that 1,000 times.
Yeah, I have. And then there's those that complain that they can't upload it to YouTube because of the copyrighted music. So.
Well, the latest project that you're doing is disc related as well, and this is we've kind of described it as a whack-a-mole game. So we've seen floppy disk orchestras. How is this different?
So I thought it would be fun to create a game where discs would pop up and you'd have to push them back in again as quick as possible. But me being me, I wanted it to be a bit silly. So sometimes they just pop up a little bit, and sometimes they actually spit out and fly out and fall on the floor because it's fun. And I've liked whack-a-mole games. So that's exactly what I wanted to create. But then I also added a twist to it. So it wasn't just that you had to eject, you had to push them back in again. Sometimes it was getting you to eject them as well. So there's a little eject button on them. But to keep it in line with the retro theme, the whole thing runs off an Amiga 600. So.
I love it. Yeah, it sounds like such a good concept. Like I've been to a few demo parties where they've done floppy disk throwing competitions and stuff. I can imagine you would invent like a floppy disk machine gun or something in the future.
Catapult, yeah.
And then I was really lucky. I asked Hoffman to create a soundtrack for it, describing exactly what it was. And I sent him a little video, and the soundtrack he created was absolutely perfect how it should work. And it really does get you on edge. And I've just invested in a slightly louder sound system for it to really do that justice.
I can't wait to play on that. Do you have any shows that you're going to be showing that at?
So I will be showing it at the Cambridge event, which I think will have happened by now.
Yes, last weekend.
Yep. And I haven't got any plans after that just yet. I would love to take it to Amiga Germany, but there's no way that's going to fit in my bag. So
you'll end up detained at the airport bringing that through. Right?
Well, do you know what? I took that and the Mister and things like that to Amiga Island last year. The things that confused them were floppy disks. They didn't understand what they were, but they were quite happy with the floppy drives. And then I got stopped at the airport on the way back because of a 4-plug strip, which apparently set off the explosives detector.
Same thing happened to me recently as well. Yeah, it turns out they don't like extension leads.
No, it's very strange.
I had 3 German police running up to me and ripping apart my Amiga. To Germany,
you don't want that.
Yeah, avoid it.
So I'm not taking anything to Germany because, well, don't have the space. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of events as well, you do run an incredible service, Retro.Directory, which you list loads of community things on there, including podcasts. Thank you for featuring us on there and our respective YouTube channels. You've got Twitch channels on there as well. Very importantly, events as well. So you've got this great map. Well, basically, looking at it now, I mean, it kind of, you can give it permission to, to see where you are on the map, and it'll tell you what events are happening nearby. And they're not just in the UK. See them on Ireland here, see them all over Europe too. So tell us where the idea of Retro.Directory came from, and what is it for people that might not have checked it out yet?
Well, I got the idea several years ago after visiting the computer museum near me, which is the Retro Computer Museum in Leicester. And I thought that had been there for years and I didn't know about it. And where I live, it's literally about 15 minutes away. So I thought there's got to be loads of these great places out there that are just not getting seen. They can't afford to do the advertising because they run as charities and things like that. So they can't do that. And I thought it'd be really good to have a resource out there where all of these places are listed, not just museums, but like arcades and user groups and bars and cafes and things like that as well. So I thought I'll put a site together with a map that can have all that on it. And then I thought, well, these places also have special events and things as well, so maybe I should have an events section too. And the biggest thing I wanted to make sure was the whole thing was ran free, so anyone could list their own things on there without having to pay. And that's what I created, and I released that about 2 years ago. And I've just released a new update to the site, which adds a whole load of new features and redesigns the site so it's a lot clearer and simpler to use. So, for example, it's now got a service on there where you can sell tickets for your event, and I don't charge for that. It's completely free. There's an alert system, so you can sign up and say, hey, I'm sort of here, and I want to know if there's any events going to be happening within, say, 50 miles of me, and it will send you an email when it discovers those. So I really, really want to get the information out there so that when these places are running these things, people get to know about them, because unfortunately I get emails every now and then saying, oh, I'm sorry to let you know such and such place is closed, and it's really sad. Especially when you know they're not even on the directory and they haven't even seen it. Because go on.
I think it's just so good, because getting so many people involved, like this is one thing for the podcast that all our listeners would be really interested in. Having radiuses with user groups that are in the area, but stuff like points of interest, statues, tribute, places where things were made. Whenever I go on holiday, I check on Retro.Directory and see where the stores are, because it's user recommended and created content, which is a lot better than Google. It's actually getting that specific stuff that we really want. I think it's an amazing resource. And you did mention tickets there as well, so that's got no booking fee then.
No booking fee. You just pay whatever the card transaction fees are, which I've nothing to do with. So
that's absolutely fantastic. And also, you're looking for advertisers on there as well.
I am, yeah.
It's a great place to advertise.
So, yeah, obviously it costs me a certain amount to run the site. I've had to change how it sends emails out to stop them getting caught in spam. That costs money. So it needs to start paying for itself. So I've got a retro banner advertising system in there. And yes, it will take animated GIF files. And the size they are sort of a traditional banner size that you may have seen back in the day as well. So not intrusive, not filling the page with ads like you see on certain websites these days, just one advert, quite neatly placed and not in the way. And anyone can sign up and set those up themselves.
It's amazing, because even if you're in your own town and you've not, checked it out before, check it out on Retro.Directory and you might be like, oh my God, I couldn't believe this was here, or this was so close to me, fantastic resource. I can't praise it more, I think it's just amazing.
Well done, Rob. Keep up the good work. I'll link it in the show notes as well for, I'm sure everyone's seen it, but for the people that haven't, definitely check it out. Anything coming up on YouTube then? Any videos that you're working on currently? What can we expect from there?
I've got a build of something I'm going to work on, which I've had the idea for, it must be about 8 years I've had this idea, and I just haven't built it yet. And it kind of needs to be built quite soon. And it's not retro computer related, but it's a retro theme, I guess, and you'll see what that is when it happens, assuming I get it working, because that one's all electronics and hardware based, so that one's going to be a fun build for me. And a whole host of other things as well. Lots to do.
Well, I'm sure we'll see you at an event soon, Rob. Yes. You're always great to talk to as well when we see you. So, and a real asset to the community. So, keep up the good work, and thanks so much for coming on and being our guest this week. It's been great to catch up.
Thank you for inviting me on.